So I'm going to read a little bit from this book, Through Indian Eyes. It belonged to my grandfather. I left off here on this map of North America. So let's start on the top here. Obsidian cutting tools from Arctic and subarctic sites were traded for to the south. So, oh no, it's all green. I thought it was like different colored lines, but it shows in green. I guess that's the paths people took. And here it says blankets, canoes, whale oil, and shells from the northwest coast moved inland in exchange for pelts and obsidian from the plateau. Oh, there's little arrows, I think. Yeah, okay. Mandan villages on the Missouri River were magnets for commerce in buffalo robes, deer hides, dried foods, flint, and craft items. Ornamental shell beads from coastal California were traded for cotton blankets, pottery, and stone axes from the southwest. Over here, the Grand Portage, a river and land network linking the Great Lakes with central and northern Canada, was the scene of ongoing trade in copper utensils and ornaments. Wampum beads from Long Island Sound traveled north to Nova Scotia, gaining value along the way. Woven garments from the southeastern interior were taken downriver to trade for saltwater fish and other coastal items. Bird feathers and turtle eggs from Florida were prized items in Cuba and the Bahamas. Caddoan merchants delivered valuable bowwood to customers in the southwest. Oh, okay. So the triangle is obsidian, the diamond shape is copper, and the square is other minerals. So that's what that is. Square, diamond, and triangle. Okay. So, ancient traders. North America's original trailblazers, the earliest entrepreneurs, began by traveling along familiar trails to trade with their nearest neighbors. In time, though, virtually all tribal groups became aware of a world beyond their immediate territories and a much greater variety of goods available for barter. Of special interest were minerals and products unavailable locally. Obsidian blades and drills, copper for both decorative and practical objects, and other valuable minerals, from salt and silica to turquoise and meteoric iron. Eventually, a loose trade network spanned the entire continent, with routes typically following rivers and moving across or around bodies of water. The Mississippi, Ohio, Missouri, and other rivers were all major arteries. This web of trails allowed copper implements forged in the upper Great Lakes region, for example, to be exchanged for ornamental shells from the Gulf of Mexico at the trading junction of Cahokia in Illinois, at different times Poverty Point in Louisiana, Chaco Canyon in Arizona, and other strategic centers grew prosperous as crossroads for commerce that appeared from the Atlantic to the Pacific and from the far north to Mesoamerica. centuries before any Europeans set foot on the continent. So over here there's this picture. Maybe it explains it a little bit more here, because I don't see a caption, because this is about this thing. Maybe I'll read that first. A howling coyote perched on a platform concealing a pipe stem is typical of the animal effigy pipes found in Hopewell tombs. The one above was carved in Ohio before AD 2. Below, the lofty position of this reconstructed dwelling at Mountville proclaims the eminent status of its former occupant. Okay, so that's this. It's a lot of stairs. Maybe I'll read this too. Peter Blue Cloud, Mohawk. Will you ever begin to understand the meaning of the very soil beneath your feet? From a grain of sand to a great mountain, all is sacred. Yesterday and tomorrow exist eternally upon this continent. We natives are guardians of this sacred place. Earthen platforms that supported the homes of the local aristocracy and symbolically raised them closer to the sky. The common folk had their less exalted homes in outlying communities along the Black Warrior River. Life was good for the Mississippians. At Mountville, they cultivated an array of grasses, including corn, as well as legumes and gourds. They fished the river and hunted the game-rich woods, which, much like the peoples of the Northwest, they kept in a condition Europeans later described as park-like, by burning back the underbrush. Other ceremonial centers arose in Georgia, in Oklahoma, and most impressively in Cahokia, Illinois. Here across the Mississippi from present-day St. Louis, a central mound covering some 15 acres towered over a city that in AD 1200 had perhaps 40,000 residents. These extended communities, stable and prosperous, represented a new form of social and political organization. They were chiefdoms governed by an elite hereditary sect, class, or clan, which in turn was usually ruled by a single individual. So it is that the development of a highly complex social structure should be added to the wealth of cultural assets indigenous to this hemisphere. Among these assets are any number of masterpieces, monumental architecture, practical artistry in ceramics and basket making, applied physics and astronomy, dramatic advances in agriculture, dynamic politics, devout spirituality, and an accumulated wealth of myth, legend, and oral literature. It is especially intriguing to consider that all these things and more had been woven to the fabric of American life long before ambitious mariners from Europe accidentally learned of the existence of this vast ancient land. So this is the beginning of chapter 2. New faces in an old world, the southeast. There's a picture here. Speckled Snake Creek. When the first white man came over the wide waters, he was but a little man, very little. His legs were cramped by sitting long in his big boat, and he begged for a little land. But when the white man had warmed himself at the Indian's fire, and had filled himself with the Indian's hominy, he became very large. The old people told it best, the ancient tale of land and water, darkness and light. This was how children in towns and villages across the southeast learned who they were, where their ancestors had come from, how the world itself had come to be. There were different versions, probably as many as there were old people, but the heart of the story was the same. Around the home fires of a Cherokee town, it might have gone this way. Long ago, before there were any people, the earth was a great island floating in a sea of water, suspended by 4 cords hanging down from the sky vault, which was made of solid rock. It was dark and the animals could not see, so they got the sun and set it in a track to go across the island every day from east to west, just overhead. The Creator told the animals and plants to stay awake for 7 nights, but only a few of the animals were able to, including owls and panthers, and they were rewarded with the power to go about in the dark. Among the plants, only the cedars, pines, spruces, and laurels stayed awake, so they were allowed to remain green year-round and provide the best medicines. The Creator chided the other trees. Because you have not endured to the end, you shall lose your hair every winter. People appeared last, after the animals, the sun and the plants, but they multiplied so quickly that they threatened to overrun the world. So it was decided that each woman would have only 1 child a year, and it has been that way ever since. The old storytellers described other wondrous things from long ago. The turkey buzzard's flapping wings that scooped out all the hills and valleys, and the water spider who brought fire from a hollow sycamore tree on a distant island. They also spoke of great troubles yet to come. The world would grow old and worn out, they said. The people would die, the 4 cords would break, and the earth would sink into the ocean. Future generations had reason to remember these prophetic stories, but earth did not sink into the sea. Perhaps, but it was from the sea that the strangers came, strangers who would overturn the world as they had known it. Preceding page. Tomo Chachi, member of a Greek trade delegation to London, sat for this portrait with his nephew during the 1754 visit. The Blue Ridge Mountains were part of the sprawling domain of the Cherokee, a bountiful land that would meet all their needs, it was said, so long as they took care to preserve the intricate harmony of the Creator's work. I like how pink the flowers are. I'm going to turn it again. So it's a portrait of people. I'm not sure. Did it say exactly who? Tomo Chachi. So that's a portrait. I thought maybe it was like just an illustration, but yeah, it's from 1754. Gifts of the Earth. That world was one of natural abundance, from Chesapeake Bay south of the Gulf of Mexico and west to the Mississippi Valley. The southeast comprised a generous mix of mountains, tidal lowlands, rolling uplands, and expanses of forest everywhere. In the Florida flatlands, Timucua and Calusa children grew up gathering wild grapes, persimmons, and the fruit of the prickly pear. Farther north, in the hill country of Alabama and the Mississippi, the Chickasaw Creek and Choctaw collected acorns, chestnuts, wild strawberries, and blackberries from the forests and fields. And throughout the region, a moist, warm climate and long summer seasons allowed most communities to plant 2 corn crops a year. The Tuscarora, and Pamlico grew corn in the sandy loam of the Carolina coastal plain, while the Powhatan and their neighbors farmed alluvial soil along the rivers that fed Chesapeake Bay. The southeast was also a land of many rivers. In the Mississippi Valley, the Natchez people took bream, catfish, and eels from the Great River and the streams that fed it. Along the Atlantic coastal plain each spring, fishermen built weirs to trap ocean-going fish that came up the rivers to spawn. People of the tidewater regions were especially fond of Atlantic sturgeon, giant bottom-dwelling fish that appeared in March and often remained in the rivers until early fall. Everywhere the routines and rhythms of life followed the wheel of the seasons. For the Cherokee Gogi, the warm season between April and October was the time to travel, to make war, to plant and harvest. The cold, Gola, from October to April, was the time to collect nuts, to hunt for deer, black bears, wild turkeys, and other game, and to gather inside to tend the fires and retell the stories. Plants and animals, too, knew their seasons. March was herring month. In the late April, and the turkey cocks were on the prowl. June was the lush strawberry season. Late autumn, when white-tailed bucks were competing for mates, was also the season when they abandoned some of their usual caution, and so made themselves easier targets for hunters. So here's another map. It says most major southeastern tribes of the early 1700s were loose confederations formed after 1492 in the wake of epidemics that had destroyed the ancestral mound builder societies. Recent estimates place the native population of the southeast before European contact as high as 2 million. By 1700 it had fallen to perhaps 130,000. Language remained a strong unifying force. The Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole all spoke Muskegean languages. The Cherokee and Tuscarora were Iroquoian speakers. The Powhatan spoke an Algonquian language, and scattered Sequoian speakers included Catalpa, Yuchi, and Quapaw. The Appalachian Mountains in Florida, Mississippi River, Tennessee River, Powhatan, Secotan, Pamlico, Tuscarora, Catawba, Yuchi, Yamasee, Timucua, Seminole, Calusa, Lower Creek, Appalachia, Upper Creek, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Natchez, Tunica, Quapaw. So that's the region that this chapter refers to. Here. Choctaw's hunter's prayer. Dear, I am sorry to hurt you, but the people are hungry. It's a little flamingo. Herds of more than 200 browsing whitetails were a common sight in the rich bottomland forests, and yielded a good supply of both venison and hides, which could be scraped clean of hair and tanned into velvety buff-colored leather for moccasins and clothing. Black bears were a dangerous quarry, but worth the risk. A single kill rewarded the hunter with abundant meat and fat for cooking, a warm blanket for winter, and the esteem of family and neighbors. True success, however, involved more than an individual skill and courage in the forest. In the old days, the storyteller said all the animals and plants had lived together in peace with the people. But as time went on, men invented knives and bows, blowguns, spears, and hooks, and began to slaughter the animals for their flesh and skins. So the animals held councils to discuss these grave threats. The deer decided they would send rheumatism to any hunter who killed one of them without at least asking their pardon. To enforce this policy, they agreed that little deer, who was swift as the wind, could not be seen, would race to the spot the moment a deer was shot and ask the animal spirit if it had heard the hunter's prayer for forgiveness. If so, all was well, but if not, the little deer would follow the hunter back to his village and cripple him with rheumatism. So it was that the young men were taught prayers, asking the Creator that the spirit of a slain deer return in the body of a fawn. Or maybe I'll just finish this paragraph. Likewise, many of the new hunters were forbidden to eat the first bear, deer, or turkey they killed. This was a momentous occasion, meant to renew the sacred bond between human and animal for another generation, not merely to indulge the appetite of a single day. So, maybe I'll stop there for today. And I'll continue reading in another video. So yeah, that was some of Drew Indian Eyes. Hope that helped you fall asleep a little bit. Yeah, thank you for watching my videos and liking and subscribing and commenting everything. Yeah, hope that helped you fall asleep.